Alright folks, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and I just want to talk about, I think, 3 challenges that Capital Games is facing right now that I don't know if they have answers in the works for, but I think taking a look at these areas would make the game far better than it is right now. With this Order 66 raid going to be going on now for a year, they hopefully have some extra time on their hands, one, to get out the next raid, but also to fix some of the content that just feels really stale, lagging behind, or economies that need adjusting now that the game has continued to progress. So, with that said, like, subscribe, comment down below. Let's give a shout out to our channel members, as always, for their continued support. If you guys are ever interested, that link is in the description of the video, along with a link to our Discord. I just really appreciate everything that these folks do, whether it's in the comment section, on live streams, wherever it is. You guys are the best, and I really appreciate everything. I am, humbled, honored, and blessed to be able to create this content for you guys, so it's much appreciated. Let's get in here, and let's talk about Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. Alright folks, so the first area that I think Capital Games has with stale content is Grand Arena, and we don't have it right now, but Territory Wars, and even like Conquest. And I'm just going to sit in like the GAC screen while I kind of talk about this a little bit, but these game modes kind of feel really stale. They always say, oh, well, datacrons are supposed to keep these game modes fresh, but all they do, maybe some of the teams change, but the general strategy is always the same. The general strategy is put your heavy stat datacrons on your Galactic Legends and pray to God that nobody beats it. Like, the datacrons are even feeling more and more stale. Like, we've had the light side 15 and 15 for how long now? Health, protection, defense, the stats aren't changing anymore. It's really getting pretty bleak. And I think part of that is because they saw the stats that people were willing to invest in and the ones people weren't willing to invest in. And so now, instead of it being kind of like a mixture of, hey, this time you want this time you want that, it's like, it's all the same. Just get the highest defense, get the highest offense, and move on with life. And get 15 and 15 for the light side. It feels really, really, really stale. And I think those game modes were, especially Territory Wars and GAC, that's where datacrons are supposed to keep the content fresh, and they're not doing that. Now, that's a problem with datacrons, but I also think just the maps themselves, they've not changed. It's the same, 11 ground teams, 15 ground teams. It's been the same for how long now? The locations, it really, really feels like we should do something here, because it doesn't feel right. And, Territory Wars, it's the same thing with, just the matchmaking, but also just, it's the same map. It's been the same for forever. So those, I'd love some way to make that different, whether it's, hey, in this zone, these teams get bonuses and, whatever, and it changes, and just force us to use some differing teams, make it a little bit, more challenging, or be like, hey, the wild card for this Grand Arena is no Galactic Legends. There's just some cool things you could do that we don't. But Conquest is another one that I think feels stale. I feel with Conquest, this used to be a game mode that I would say was pretty well tuned for the player base. You get it at 4 million and you're already going to feel like you can do some good stuff. Now, by the time you hit hard mode, you still barely scratch the surface, because when it first started, you think the biggest players in Conquest were probably, 8 million, with, the starting GP being 4. Now you have players with 16 million galactic, 15, 16 million galactic power in, going through the same teams that you have players with 4 million. There's people who are done with Conquest in a few days. I got done in less than a week, and I wasn't even trying that hard. And it's something where I sit there and I'm like, we need a new difficulty. Hey, I'm willing to try harder if it means I can get better rewards, because Conquest is another one of those game modes that I'd say I do this out of necessity, and then I'm just going to refresh datacron nodes. It would be nice if there was some level of engagement that I could get to at times. And maybe this is a hot take, but I enjoy when I have a challenge in this game, and I just feel like Conquest is one where it's alienating players who should be able to get further in hard mode, because they need to make defeats semi-hard enough that someone at my galactic power isn't done in day 1. but then we're still done in a handful with how much time on our hands, and it's kind of a calamity of issues there. So those kind of stale game modes, those ones in particular, I think are extremely stale. And we could talk a little bit about TB in that regard, but I think because some of us haven't reached all of the planets and we still don't have all of the teams yet, that there's a lot more to explore here. And this one, there's at least a pathway to creating new planets, to shaking things up, that is missing in a lot of these other game modes. Like, they told us when they first created this that their plan is to add extra planets. We've gotten 2 of them already. Would love to get some more. But I think we can kind of hang our hat on the plan is in place here, that they'll be able to add stuff. I don't see how that's possible with GAC, Conquest, or Territory Wars yet, and I think that's a challenge that they're going to have to face. The next is particularly around Relic 8s, and that is the devaluation of Relic 8s. Relic 8 materials have been completely devalued in this game. And what I mean by that is, when you look at the abundance of Relic 9 materials and you look at the abundance of Relic 8 materials, it is far easier to get Relic 8 than it is Relic 9. Or far easier to get Relic 9 than it is Relic 8. When you look objectively, it's easier to get Relic 8 materials than it is to get Relic 9 materials. Sorry, God, I can't talk right now. It is easier to get your hands on Relic 9 materials than it is Relic 8 materials. That it should be Relic 9 is the hardest, Relic 8 is easier, but it isn't. And part of that is because of era magnifiers, where they still really treat era magnifiers pretty harshly. There's still something that is very challenging to get. It's not easy to obtain these things, even though they're in the guild store. The one problem with them being in the guild store is they're in the guild store with impulse detectors and Zimito cards and electrum conductors and even Gerda keypads, and they're in with other resources that we also need. Like, that's where your Gerda keypads, if you look at a Gerda keypad here, here's a great example for your average player. If you look at, hey, where am I supposed to get Gerda keypads? It's guild store, shipments, you can maybe get them in scavenger. Like, it just, there's not, like, this is one of the primary sources for players. So, like, that's taking the space of these pieces. I felt like ever since they released Relic 9, Relic 8 got devalued, and I feel like it's continuing to happen because you have these events like the, if you go to like the era battles, for example, for Order 66, you're guaranteed to get droid brains, you're guaranteed to get Gerda keypads. But then you look, it's okay, you're going to get either 10 era magnifiers or 10 impulse detectors. Here's the problem. I needed double the amount of era magnifiers as I do Gerda keypads and droid brains, but they're not as available, right? They're not nearly as available as the impulse detectors, and that's kind of everywhere. Now you say, oh, well, the math shakes out that you're going to get 50-50 here, but it doesn't always shake out that way, right? Especially when you think about, what you spent to get there, that your return to get the impulse detectors, realistically, because you're splitting it with the impulse detector and era magnifier here, you're going to get the same amount of these as you will these over the entire era battle. That's not okay, right? The Relic 8 materials, particularly era magnifiers, are so scarce that it kind of poses a big problem. And I think it's a challenge that CG is going to have to solve at some point, because if they ever want to increase relics beyond Relic 9, they're going to either have to solve some of these relic bottlenecks or just completely revolutionize how relics work. Because the game is getting to that point where players want to have those Relic 8s. They need to have those Relic 9s. It's no longer becoming a luxury. Everything is requiring Relic 8s and 9s now, and if it's not readily available for players to get them on top of everything else, it's an issue, and it is something that I feel they need to solve. It is a problem that's only going to get worse as more events come out that require Relic 8 and Relic 9 for players to obtain the rewards from. So that is something to think about there. And I'd even argue when you look at the orders, the Peridia Patrol and Duel of the Fates assault battles. If you guys remember back to those, those battles, particularly like the, let's go to the Galactic Republic one, Duel of the Fates, with, Master Obi-Wan and Padawan Obi-Wan, Master Qui-Gon. Gosh, I can't talk today. Sorry, my brain is mush. When you look at these two, it's like a little over a year for your return on the Relic 9 materials, and it's like 4 years for the Relic 8s. So they don't make Relic 8s as easy to obtain as they do Relic 9s, and I think that is going to be a problem as this game continues to move forward, because I'm seeing more and more players who are running out of arrow magnifiers. Like, I've seen a couple guys in my guild, they have plenty of Relic 9s, they don't have enough Relic 8s. I've seen it on Arnold streams. If you guys watch Arnold streams, it's the same thing. He's running out of arrow magnifiers and impulse to, arrow magnifiers, but he's got the droid brains to handle it. It's an economy that I think CG needs to get their hands on and fix before it gets out of hand, because if it gets out of hand, trying to fix it will be nigh impossible without completely shifting the economy and creating other problems entirely. The final challenge I think that Capital Games is facing right now is these flash in the pan teams. So if we use Gungans as a great example, they were in the Naboo raid. Now there's no reason to build them, right? There's no reason for these characters to realistically get built, because you're going to want to build other things for this raid and then other things for the next raid. It's a flash in the pan. Like, it was good, and now its time is done. And these kind of teams, I have a fear, will continue to crop up, will continue to kind of sit around in players' rosters, because they're not going to feel the need to get them. They're not going to feel the need to have them because they're going to get replaced by something else. Not that I don't want this game to continue releasing new characters, but I have a fear that if you don't give purpose to some of these teams that were in older raids or older characters, you're going to see a steep drop-off of players feeling they need to make that investment. And you could say, oh, well, maybe they're just going to try to sell you a Lightspeed bundle. But how many people will buy that bundle if they feel like it's not anything that their account needs? Some people still will, because they'll buy every single bundle. But other players, I feel, won't spend that because they're not going to feel they need it, right? That they're fueled. My Lightspeed bundle purchases, almost all of them were fueled by thinking I needed it, not because I just want it, right? That's why I don't have the Jawa and the Tusken bundles and some of these other ones, because I didn't feel I needed it. So these flash in the pan type teams, Gungans would be an example. Even getting into a little bit like the mercenary team with Balin, it feels like a flash in the pan right now. It's like hey, they were a part of the meta for a while and now they're kind of not. Like the new Bad Batch feels this way with some of the Order 66 raid stuff. Like, are they going to be a flash in the pan? Are they going to do anything outside of this raid? Or when this raid goes off, are they just going to become kind of hey, they're a nice to have team, but you don't really need them? And if that's the case, then we need to figure out how to, more accurately utilize those teams in other game modes, or else players will never make that investment. And that's not good for this game. It's good for the game for everybody to be working on something and constantly evolving their roster. So I want to talk about that, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the force be with you, and I'll see you next one. Cheers, my friends.